Have you ever wondered what your pets are thinking or feeling? If you're someone who's lost your animal companion because they've crossed over, I'm sure you often wonder how they're doing and if they're even around you in spirit. Well, today I'm speaking with a woman who can answer those questions. Daniela Amato is an animal intuitive, Reiki Master, and author. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for jumping on the podcast to talk to me about that. I'm so excited to speak with you. I've been waiting for this all week. And so,
Hey.
before we get into the incredible work that you do, let's go
Mhm.
back to the beginning. When did you realize that you had this unique gift?
When I was young, I often heard animals talking to me. I grew up in the Bronx, so I was at the Bronx Zoo often. But hearing those voices and then telling your grown-ups about it, they kind of said, "Oh, it's your imagination. You're very creative, blah, blah, blah." So I pushed it to the side. It wasn't until, excuse me, it wasn't until my dog Little Bear came into the picture that I really started realizing that I'm not that creative. It wasn't my imagination. It was the animals speaking. Yeah.
And what's going like the first time this happened? What's going through your mind at that point? Because it's new at this point. And when
hmm
did you realize that okay, this is really happening? I can
hmm
communicate with animals.
Yeah. So Little Bear just he would respond exactly the way my thoughts were or that I said to him, like not just like a semi answer, but it was a correct response, um, or a very definitive response, I should say. So that's when I started really like saying, wait a minute, he's hearing what I'm thinking and what I'm saying. Let me try it in reverse. And then he would do something and then I would respond and he would get like so excited. So that's really when I started piecing everything together, like, yeah, this is a real thing, this is happening.
Now, when you're communicating, do the animals do they present with like images or is it words? How does that work for people who they want to be able to kind of
Mhm.
like experience that with you? How does that come across?
Right. So I think each animal communicator has different gifts and works differently. For me, I see primarily picture images of my daughter's just coming in. Sorry. I see picture images of what their thoughts are and what they're thinking about, or a memory even. Others might, I also feel on my body sensations. That points me in the direction of that area. So I know it's something that they want to talk about. What else? And then I'll just have like impressions of, I don't hear voices. Like some intuitives might actually hear, a voice and full sentences. I don't hear voices, but I have more of an impression of words and feelings.
And how did you hone those gifts? And I can imagine it's through practice, but
Mhm.
what was your process to hone these gifts? And then also, when did you decide to dedicate your life and career to this?
Mhm. Um, so the honing of the gifts came about when I became a Reiki Master. That is energy work. It's healing through energy. And when you open yourself up to that, you're opening yourself up to all of universal life force energy. And so my gifts became clearer. They became easier to access, put it that way. Does that make sense?
When Oh, no, that makes and
Okay.
actually, that makes perfect sense 'cause I've had Reiki sessions before, so no, I understand what you mean.
hmm
And so when you do these, communication sessions, and
hmm
do you, can you kinda take me through the process? What is that
Um,
like? How does it
Sure. So for me, I always
Mhm.
ask for a photograph just so I can really focus on that individual animal. I don't need the photograph. Oftentimes, other animals will come in organically, that's fine. But if I want to communicate with one in particular, the photo helps. In the beginning, I used to meditate for a half hour, like really get in, now I could do it more instantaneously. The more you do it, the easier it comes. Also, I think the animals trust is there more, like they know that I'm okay. So they just start talking pretty quickly. Um, I asked them a couple of questions just to kind of break the ice, like what do they think of themselves? Like it's almost like I'm on a little date with the animal, right? Like what do you like? What do you think about? What, blah, blah, blah. And I write all that down and then I call the human. I relay that information to them, and then I open it up to have a conversation. If they have questions about what was said or other questions, we have a back and forth conversation then really between the human and their animal, and I'm the translator.
Are there specific things when you're communicating with animals that that they tend to want to convey the most? What is most pressing for most animals that they want to convey to their uh,
Yeah.
human companion?
I don't know if there's like one thing in particular because each animal is an individual, right? So not all dogs are the same, not all cats are the same. It really
Sure.
depends on where they are in their life. Senior animals, they tend to just want to, talk about a memory or relay how they're feeling, or if they feel like, they want to prepare their humans for the fact that they're going to cross over. Um, Puppies, like really young puppies, they're just like so excited about everything, right? So they're just excited to be experiencing something new. They
Yeah.
really don't have a whole lot to say because they're babies, right? But they're fun because they're more curious about, well, what do you want me to do, and what does this mean, and what does that mean? And then you have your middle-aged animals that, if they're having health issues or if they're behavior issues, they like to explain why they're doing things, and that to me is the most important. Or one of the most important is giving the animal the opportunity to explain their behavior instead of just being reactive and being annoyed by their behavior. So to me, that's like the best part of
That's
communication.
interesting when you say, can you kind of explain that part a bit more when
Right.
you say giving them a chance to explain their behavior versus reacting? That's very interesting.
Mm-hmm. So, let me see if I could think of an example. Okay, so barking, right? A dog that barks a lot. Um, People get annoyed at that because it's just too much, or it's loud, or we don't, humans don't understand why are they barking. So that the human reacts to the barking by getting annoyed and telling them to stop barking. When I have the session with that animal, I'll say, well, why are you barking? What are you trying to say when you're barking? Because there's many different barks, right? There's barking because they want something, barking because they're nervous, barking because they're scared, barking because they're trying to be protective. So giving them the opportunity to explain themselves is really helpful for the relationship between the humans and the animal.
Right, right.
Mhm.
And how do animals perceive their reality and their relationship with their human companions?
So again, it's individual, right? Depends on the animal, the personality of the animal. We as humans like to say that there are babies, and they are, right?
Right.
Um, and we like I'll call myself mommy to my dog. They accept that for the most part. They see me as the mother figure, or she sees me as the mother figure, but they know the difference. They know I'm not a dog, right? It's not like they think I'm literally the mother. It's just that's the closest thing to a mother that she would know. So I kind of went off track. Sorry. So,
Oh, no, no, no.
um,
I'm with you. I understand what you're saying.
okay. So animals, like some of them think like, yeah, that's like my mom or like my dad. And others, they kind of split the couple up. Like, yeah, she's like my mom, but he's like my friend, because we play all the
Hmm.
time. So it's different. It really depends on the dynamic of the relationship. It depends on the humans, how they treat the animal, and it depends on the animal's personality.
And do they perceive because you're also a medium as well, animal, you're able to communicate with animals who've crossed over.
Hmm.
Do they,
Hmm.
how do they perceive the end of life the way, is it similar to the way humans do, or is there a difference in that? And,
Um, and
and the reason why I say that is
say that one
because,
more time. Say that one more time.
oh, no, I was asking, how do animals perceive the end of life stage and then the
Hmm.
transition of crossing over? And I was wondering if it was similar to humans, because I can remember on a personal note,
Hmm.
Stephen and I lost our dog Milo in 2020,
Hmm.
and before that, and he was 14 years old, and
Okay.
I miss him terribly. But I
Right.
remember that I could feel a sense that of knowing from him that he was
Hmm.
about to transition, and that
Hmm.
he was almost like letting me know that this was happening. I
Yeah.
mean, there was a sense of knowing there. I don't know if I'm
Yeah.
explaining that
I
correctly.
understand what you mean. Yeah. Hmm. That's one of the questions that a lot of people ask me is, what sign will their animal give them to let them know it's time to let them go? And there isn't one particular sign, and I can't even explain it. Just like you can't really explain what exactly it was. Milo, was it?
Yes, Milo.
That Milo did or looked, how something in the eyes, there was that heart to heart connection. You just felt that that's what he was saying. And that's pretty much it. Like they're not going to like, woo, like wave a flag or do anything dramatic. Only the human who belongs to that animal will really get that that's the time. The one thing I will say is if you're questioning, like, oh, is that a sign? Is he trying to say he wants to go? It's not. Because when it is time, there is no question. You'll know it just like you knew it that in that moment.
When you're
Yeah.
communicating with animals who've crossed over, how do
Hmm.
they present themselves
That's a
to
great
you?
question. That's a good question. They like to present themselves um, how they think they are most remembered.
Mm.
Sometimes that's when they're at their best and like youthful, energetic. Sometimes it's how they looked at the end, right? If they think that that's what the human is going to remember the most.
Mm.
Obviously, they're not in physical form anymore, so they can take on whatever image they want to send to me that they feel will most describe themselves to their humans.
Interesting. And do they ever present with other
Hmm.
animals? I
Yeah.
mean, what is that like? Can you kind of like describe that for us, like so we can have a mental picture?
Yeah. So they all family reconnects in the afterlife, whether it's animal, human, whether you met on Earth or not. Um, a lot of times I'll say like, oh, so and so is with a grandfatherly figure, and the human will say, oh, they never met him in life. That's okay because family's family. There's that cord that connects, right? So how it looks to me, and again, each medium, each communicator, has different signs, is they'll just sort of be behind them or like right next to them, and I'll see them and say like, oh, who is this person or who is this other animal? And that's how I get to learn like who they're hanging out with. Sometimes they're by themselves, but not because they're by themselves. It's because they want to hog the whole conversation to themselves. And then like towards the end, I might see a glimpse of like someone else, but no one's ever alone. Even, stray animals or animals that have been alone their whole life on earth. Um, there's always someone there for them. Even if they weren't connected, even if they weren't family, it's sort of like, the souls just say like, oh, they were alone in life. Let's embrace, let's give them a home here.
Mm.
So it's really beautiful.
That is.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. And,
Mm-hmm.
on that note, I had read,
Mm-hmm.
I believe it was in the book, Many Lives, Many Masters,
Mm.
and, the author was talking about groups of souls and how they can
Mm-hmm.
reincarnate together. And
Right.
so, you know how we say someone's like, I met my soulmate, or I feel like I've known this person forever, and we've never met the person.
Right.
And I was wondering, is that the same with animals?
Mm-hmm. There is a soul contract between certain animals and certain human souls. Um, I often get the question, like, are they going to come back to me like now? And for me, it's my understanding and my experience, and I could be wrong. I'm not an expert in reincarnation, but in my experience, you will be reconnected, but it's not in the same life.
Hmm.
The souls need to go back to source, and that's where you work out like, okay, so we learned this, what do we need to do now? Do you want to come with me? Do you not want to come with me? And that's where like then the next life you meet up again. But for my experience, it's not the same exact life. What can happen is Milo can send you someone else. They know
Hmm.
that you're really sad or that you need something, or they just want you to be happy like you were, right? So then they coordinate and send like someone else, and that someone else, you'll look at it and be like, they're doing the same exact thing, like it's a quirky thing that maybe Milo did, right? And why is this one doing the same exact thing? Because Milo like whispered in the ear of the new one, and it's like, do this, do that, just so that you would know this is a gift from
Yes.
Milo.
That's amazing. I just had a conversation last week with someone they are experiencing that now with their
Mhm.
new dog.
Yeah.
And we were just like, that's got to be a sign.
Yeah, definitely. And it's a beautiful gift. It's great. It might not be them, but you could love, many, right? And it's nice to know that they're still, lurking about, sending us signs and giving us little gifts like that. Excuse me.
Have you ever read that book, The Art of Racing in the Rain?
Ah, yes.
I
Yeah.
know, right? I know.
Yes, really good book.
It's
Hmm.
an amazing book,
Yeah.
and I think that's the only book that I've read from the perspective of the way it's told through the dog's eyes.
Right, right,
And
right.
it gives a lot of insight into what the animals are thinking
Yeah.
and are feeling and
Yes.
personality. And at the very end, um, I don't remember the actual copy, but I remember the dog saying something to the effect of, I can't be too mad at the grandparents for treating me this way, because they don't realize that when I come back next time, I'm coming back as a human, the little
Oh,
boy.
okay.
You
Uh-huh,
remember that
uh-huh.
part of it?
I vaguely, it's been
Yeah.
years. Yeah.
And
Mhm.
so, and I don't know if you could answer that question, but if there are times when will they always come back as another animal, or how does that work?
Yeah. Again, I'm not an expert in that. I can't really speak to can animals come back as humans. I do know that animals can come back as different animals.
Okay.
Um, Little Bear, who I mentioned earlier, originally in his first life was a wolf.
Mm.
And so when he was in this little form, he was 17 pounds. he often was like, gosh, I should have picked like a bigger body. Like, what was I thinking? you know? But I don't know if animals could come. I, I never say no because I just don't know. Anything is possible as far as I'm concerned.
And I'm
Yeah.
sure there's too many instances to even, to pick one, but are there some things that like what surprises you at this point, like when you're doing sessions where you're like, oh, wait a
Mhm.
minute, that's new, because I can
Mhm.
imagine you have seen and experienced it all, but are there some moments that you can detail that even was shocking to you?
Um, I wouldn't say shocking, but I would say like it took me by like made me belly laugh, like just out of,
Okay.
like like because I wasn't expecting it. And of course right now I can't think of a single thing. Um what happens with me is after sessions, once I hang up that phone, pretty much it all leaves my head. Um
Mm.
I
Because you're
take
in the zone.
notes. I'm sorry.
Because is it because you're kind of like you were into the zone and
I
you're being
think
pulled out
so.
of it?
Yeah, I think so. Also, there's probably just there's not enough space up here for me to keep like all the sessions in my head. But there are times where like an animal will just their delivery of how they're giving the messages is like a little sassy, or it could be like super sweet. You really get like the personality of the animal. Um, a couple of times, an animal will say something, and the humans are like, no, 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 that's not that. We don't think that's it at all, and it won't leave my head, which is my sign for myself that there's more there, like something else. This animal really wants to say this. And by the end of the conversation, like the humans are like, yeah, you're right. Like we
Yeah.
did do that or something. I'm like, the animals don't lie. They don't make up stories. They're really pure, in what they're saying. So that it's fun for me. It's always fun for me.
And on that note, how do you is there a decompression process for you after that? Because when you're tapping into that energy and then,
Mhm.
you're coming out of it, how do you unwind from something like that?
That's another good question. um, if I'm on my game and I remember, I will do like a sage. I'll do in Reiki we like brush away. I will do that. A shower is always good just to like physically, but also energetically wash away, detach. You could do cord cutting. There's like a whole bunch of things that you could do. When I don't and I forget because I'm rushing to do something else, I will start feeling very heavy and congested and like, why am I in this mood? Like, there's no
Mhm.
reason for it. Like, I just kind of feel out of sorts. And so Reiki does help me with that. Like, I definitely benefit from receiving a Reiki session at that point. Yeah.
In your experience, what do you think that we as humans need to understand about our pet
Mm.
companions?
My biggest uh, I guess it's a pet peeve is people love animals, which is great, but they don't understand the animal they're getting. And they
Mm.
expect it to be a certain way because that's what they want. So, what I come across a lot is you really should know the breed that you're getting and the behavior of that breed, because if you're kind of a couch potato, don't get a high energy dog, right? Things like that, little things like that, but they're really important because that conflict of personalities is going to end up producing conflicts, and it's not going to make a harmonious relationship. Did I answer your? I feel like I went off track again.
Oh, no, 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 you're answering.
Yeah, okay.
I understand what you're saying.
Um, So yeah, that's important to like really recognize and separate what you want. Every animal is different. You might want a cuddly, puppy, and they don't like to be cuddled. Don't force that cuddling on them because that's going to create a rift.
How can one be more, how can one get more in tune with their animal companion? Well, what can they do?
I think the most important thing to do, I'm trying to get my words right here. Um, Detach from what you want, right?
Mhm.
Love the animal for the animal. And when you don't have expectations of how they're supposed to be, right, based on your own thoughts, um, they really have the space to be who they are. And then you can form attachments and do things based on that. That's going to go a long way, because think about it. We have animals in a human world, right? They're in our homes. They have to go by human rules. That's not who they are at the core. A dog is a dog, a cat is a cat, but they're abiding by our human environment. So if we give them the opportunity to be really who they are, that's going to make them feel more confident and happier, because you're acknowledging them and not acknowledging who you want them to be.
And when one first gets their pet and they bring them home, how do they know when the pet has what I think the word is imprinted
Mm.
on them?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Forms
that,
like a really deep bond with a particular person. Um, Again, it's kind of like, how will I know when it's time for them to go? It's the same thing. You'll just feel it. And sometimes not every animal imprints on their family. You could still form a close bond, but that imprinting, it became popular because of Twilight. Um, it's not gonna, right. That doesn't happen all the time,
uh-huh.
and that's okay. You could still have a really close and deep bond and friendship with your animal. Yeah.
When you're doing these sessions and communicating with an animal that's at that stage where they're about to cross over, are there specific things that you tell the humans that they need to that they should do to help that healing process because they're about to go through that stage of grief and how do you advise them to get through that
For
time?
the humans to get through
Yeah, for the
for the
humans
humans to
to
get
get
through it. Um, so unless they ask me for something, I don't. Everybody is different. Everyone
Mhm.
has their own grieving process. I'm not a therapist. I don't want to get into that part of stuff. Um, my role in those situations is really just relaying the messages from the animal to the human to the animal. Um, if they ask me, my biggest thing, that the main thing that you need is just patience with yourself. There's no right or wrong way to grieve. There's no, oh, you should be over it in X amount of days, months. Just let all of that go and just grieve.
I can remember when Stephen and I had an end of life massage
Mm,
session for Milo, and one of
mm,
the things that the woman was telling us was that he stayed a little bit longer because he wanted to make sure that we were okay.
mm-hmm.
And
Sometimes I do
is
that.
that something that you find when you're doing these sessions that the animal's concerned about their
Mm-hmm.
human companion
The
before
animals
crossing
are
over?
always concerned about their humans, and as well as other animals that are in the family. Um, and they don't want to leave, right? They love us, so they don't want to not be with us, even though they understand death way better than humans do. Um, so sometimes, yes, they do stay a little bit longer, but they're not going to stay to the point of their detriment, right? At
Right.
some point, they're going to go. So they don't stay like a ridiculous amount of time.
And you say that they understand death more than humans, and I feel like I understand what you're saying, but I wanted to, if you could articulate
Mm-hmm.
articulate that for me, because that's a
Mm-hmm.
very interesting point.
Um, I'm gonna get myself in trouble here. Humans, humans, complicate everything. And part of that complication comes in ways of different religions, which is fine. Like, I'm not putting down any religion,
Mhm.
but animals don't have that. They just know there's
Mhm.
life and there's death and there's energy doesn't die and I'll come back. Like, everything is very streamlined for their thought process.
Interesting.
Yeah,
And so,
we kind of bring in like the heaven, the hell, like we just make it more complicated than it is.
are there, for people who may have some type of ability, they have some type of, they've tapped into their intuition in that sense,
Mhm.
how can they try to communicate with their pets? Or is this something that, like, you have to have that specific gift
I don't think
to
so.
do it?
I personally think everyone is born with the ability to communicate with other beings. And it's just out of um, being human, we've lost the ability. So if anyone is interested, I do feel like just learn to quiet your mind, be more observant. Humans tend to be too fast, running from one thing to the other, missing what's right in front of them. So just kind of take everything down a few notches and
Mhm.
pause and just be more observant and um, don't second guess everything. So a lot of
Mm.
times people will be like, "Oh, I thought I saw, but then oh," and they have 10 reasons why they couldn't have seen that. And I feel like no, just go with I saw that and see what happens after that, you know.
That's very true. A lot of times, humans, we will talk ourselves out of something that we saw or experienced because
Mhm.
it may be outside of someone's paradigm, and so they may not know
Exactly.
how to process that.
Right. Or it's not acceptable for whatever reason. And yeah, we come up with 90 excuses all the time. Yeah. And the other thing, again, for me, I see picture images. Anyone who is creative can easily do that as well. Just start practicing thinking in pictures.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean by that?
Hmm.
Yeah. Because the animals already know how to communicate with us. It's us that
Right.
we're
We have to learn to communicate better with them.
right. Yeah. Hmm.
That's amazing. And again, I will wrap there because there's so many other things that we can discuss, and hopefully we can talk
Hmm.
more at a later date.
Sure.
Again, thank you so much for taking time to speak with me. And for
You're
those of you who are
welcome.
watching and are listening, if you like this type of spiritual content, please don't forget to like, share, and
Yes.
subscribe.